From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Well, today we got to talk about the Musk coup and the very disappointing response. I don't know why there aren't millions of people on the streets. I really don't. I don't think we understand what's happening. Or if we do, maybe we're just numb. I don't know what's going on. So we got to talk about our response. And I'll get to that in a minute. But first I want to just get a few things out of the way. This week's new lows. As I always say, there's a new low every week. There's a couple of them. As part of the great purge here, the purge of data, the purge of systems, the purge of policy, one of the things, for no apparent reason except just to be cruel, as part of Biden's legislative programs, virtually all lead pipes around the country to be removed, saving lives of children. That's just over now. Lead pipe removal, add that to the list of the many things just scratched. So a new low. The idea has been floated that we should send prisoners, American prisoners, U.S. citizens, to El Salvador. El Salvador apparently has offered to take some of our worst prisoners and put them in their very worst prisons. Blatantly illegal, unconstitutional, but we know that doesn't matter anymore. And then in another entry of this week's new lows, exactly as we predicted on this program, the Orange Menace says he's going to turn Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East. The U.S. will own it, have it, buy it, take it. I don't know how he thinks this is going to work. But yeah, he's just going to flatten the place. Take over the Gaza Strip, level it. Asked if he will deploy troops to do it, he says, yeah, we'll do it, maybe, if it's necessary. Take it over, develop it. So this was an easy prediction to make because he alluded to this many times in the past. But now with Bibi Netanyahu right by his side, he just gets blunt about it. Yeah, we'll just take it over. The 2 million Palestinians can just go elsewhere. He's asking Jordan, Egypt, other places to just take them in and foot the bill for that. So just wants to create a permanent diaspora of Palestinians, take their land, turn it into a beachfront property, and he and his development buddies can have this great new resort on the Mediterranean. So it's disgusting, it's piggish, it's illegal, it's a war crime, it's ethnic cleansing, it's genocide, it's call it what you will. He's been hinting at this for a long time. You and I talked about it before the election. One of the many, many reasons not to vote for him when everybody was screaming at Kamala Harris for being soft on Israel. Sure, she was soft on Israel, but we said at the time, you think the Orange Menace is going to be better when he just pushes the Palestinians into the sea and takes over? So it didn't take any great insight. Believe me, I'm not bragging that I predicted this. It was pretty much obvious to anyone with eyes and ears. And of course, it's ridiculous. It's in the category with Panama and Canada and Greenland, who he also wants to take over. But we need to assume the worst. We can't just say, he's just, this is just bluster, or is this a joke, or as people love to say, maybe it's an opening bid for what he really wants. Who cares at this point? We've seen enough of his bluster, enough of his jokes, enough of his opening bids to know that at some point, yeah, he really thinks he wants to do this. And it doesn't do us any good to go through this guessing game. So to that extent, we have to take it seriously. And we begged voters to listen to us. We begged lawmakers to do everything in their power to prevent this. But, here we are. And we're still doing nothing about it. I'm begging lawmakers to stand up right now. They're not doing it. I'm begging the public to take this seriously. They're not doing it. Stop what you're doing right now and go hit the streets. But, more on that later, the hitting the streets part. Now, the last thing I'll say about this, I already spent more time on it than I should have. Because the other thing he does that we all know, he says something outrageous to distract us from other more important stories. And in this case, it certainly worked. It became the top story for a full 24-hour news cycle while Elon Musk continued his pillaging behind closed doors. So the media took their eye off the ball to chase this shiny object, to use the parlance of the day. So shame on me, I shouldn't spend too much time on this. I do want to give you a little update on mass deportations, because again, the news media has such a limited scope. They can only handle so much at a time. It's not going well for Homan and the American Gestapo. Yeah, they're doing harm and they're terrorizing people and they're arresting people, but not at any great rate. The show us your papers regime is still hanging in there. They're talking about allowing local police to arrest immigrants, to basically deputize local law enforcement as federal agents. Again, everything they propose, virtually everything they propose is illegal, is unlawful, is unconstitutional. But, they don't care. You and I have had that conversation too many times to count. They just don't care. They don't care about the law. They are lawless. Fine, it's against the law. Sue me. What are you going to do? You going to stop me? Yeah, you and what army? Says the Orange Menace. Apparently there's been a rash of ICE impersonation with this immigration crackdown. Yeah, Billy Bob and Joe Bob and, their cousins and their buddies are just pretending to be ICE agents and going out and trying to arrest people of color. So that's happening. In the good news, bad news category, as I mentioned, much of this is failing. There is pushback. The birthright citizenship order has been put indefinitely on hold. We talked about that last week, that a judge put the brakes on that. But the latest development, that hold is now indefinite. But it does remain in the courts, and it can work its way up to the Supreme Court, and we know what they're capable of. And it's crazy. Of course it's crazy. But it's no more crazier than presidential immunity, and they gave that to him. But still, good news today. The abolishing of birthright citizenship put on hold indefinitely. So that's good news. Another federal judge in Washington temporarily blocked the Federal Bureau of Prisons from carrying out the Orange Menace's executive order to move incarcerated transgender women into men's facilities and stop gender transition medical treatments. We talked about this last week. Dragging trans women out of their jail cells. These are incarcerated people. And telling them, no, you're going to a men's facility. Good luck to you. Oh, and all your medical treatments? No, they're over now. A federal judge has put a stop to that. Again, we have to keep repeating it. 100% everything he's doing so far has been through executive order. Or through just blatant law breaking. Theft. That's where Musk comes in. The bad cop game they're playing, the Orange Menace is relying on executive orders. And they're not worth the paper he smudges his fat Sharpie on. So we have to keep that in mind. Thank God we got some judges out there. And again, I'll say this, get tired of hearing it. I'll say it every week. Thank God for ACLU. Thank God for labor unions. Thank God for the Southern Poverty Law Center. We got people out there working. So there's some good news. And in the good news, bad news category, let's see, more bad news. Migrant flights. Oh, migrant flight. Yeah, okay, so the first flight to Guantanamo Bay. The Orange Menace has said he wants to house, it's too kind of a word. He wants to detain, jail, up to 30,000 people in the new detention camp known as Guantanamo Bay. Well, that started with the first flight. It is basically for show. It was one flight. We didn't get any information. Reporters are telling us that maybe a dozen people were on that flight. We don't know exactly. In other headlines, since you and I have spoken, it's been found that TikTok's algorithm exhibited a pretty substantial pro-Republican bias during the 2024 presidential race. Yeah, a pretty thorough study shows that TikTok, which we knew, especially those last few days, when they were openly kissing his ass on that deadline for closure. We are grateful to the wonderful President Trump who will save us. Remember that little notice that came up when you logged on to TikTok? Well, apparently they were at it long before that, all through the campaign. He was their guy, and they manipulated their algorithm so that left-leaning TikTok users got a lot more Republican-leaning messages, especially negative messages regarding the Democrats. And right-leaning users got substantially more pro-right, anti-left. And if you're saying, oh, well, that's just based on preferences. No, the study was pretty thorough to take that into consideration. You know how studies work. They're constants, they're variables. These people are academics. They know what they're doing. So they took that into consideration. And kind of related to that, there's growing suspicion, and I'm not going to talk too much about this because I don't want to be accused of being a conspiracy theorist. I've never been that type at all. But I will report that there's been growing suspicion that Elon Musk rigged election systems in swing states. The Orange Menace himself, in that little weird coy way he has, that coy cryptic way he has of talking, he made remarks before and after the election, especially about Pennsylvania. He talked about how, Elon Musk really knows about those election computers in Pennsylvania. That really worked out for us. It's like, what are you talking about, man? He's like a little kid who does something bad, and he feels like he has to brag about it. So there's that. If you weren't depressed enough already, there's suspicion that the swing states were rigged. And this really came up for two reasons. And again, I've already said because of Trump's weird little remarks, but also because of the way Musk is handling himself within the bowels of the state computer system. Pam Bondi has now had her first day in office, and she started with a flurry of orders, kind of mimicking her boss. Just a whole bunch of orders on day one, mainly focused on the whole investigate the investigators. They made promises about how they were going to be our retribution, investigate the investigators. Then they got in their little confirmation hearings and lied to senators. Oh, no, I wouldn't dream of being political. No, of course not. And then day one, boom. So that's happening. Jack Smith, everybody. Trans athletes this week, the Orange Menace, again, executive order, no law to back it up. In fact, blatantly unlawful and will be struck down or stayed. But another promise kept. Trans girls in schools now banned from participating in sports. And he's just so proud of his bigotry. But it's just an executive order. There's no standing in law. He just continues the big, horrible show. Tariffs were the big story over the weekend. And again, the press kind of got hoodwinked on that one. Tariffs on China, Mexico, and Canada were announced several days before they were to be implemented. I knew they were just bargaining chips. I knew they were just bluster. I wasn't going to go through with that. But they got all the attention because if they had gone through, according to the people who know about these things, it would have been a major hit on the world economy. Put the price of groceries through the roof and washing machines and everything else. So, I guess I get it. But, you and I knew that wasn't going to happen. Of course, then he lied about the so-called concessions he got from Canada and Mexico. It's just like he lied about Colombia. Remember just last week when he was claiming that Colombia caved on taking the immigrant flights. Well, none of that was true. Colombia refused to take that first flight because they were treating the immigrants unlawfully and inhumanely. He insisted that the United States follow international law. So Colombia won that one. And the Orange Menace just lied about it. He lied about Canada and Mexico. Their so-called concessions were things about putting people at the border and money for fighting the flow of fentanyl. None of this was conceded. These were all things that were already agreed to under President Biden. So if you haven't figured this out yet, He invents problems and then he solves problems that were never true and then he lies to you about it. It's all a big show. He's still just the guy on The Apprentice. That's all he ever was. That's all he'll ever be. And all the while, through that whole weekend, people just obsessed with tariffs, Elon Musk was breaking into the U.S. Treasury and shutting down USAID. And by now, just a few days in, this takeover of the U.S. government is virtually government-wide. Thousands of career civil servants just fired, laid off, put on leave, purged because of a perceived insufficient loyalty to dear leader. Whole internal systems, access to funds, access to personal information for virtually all Americans in the hands now of Elon Musk and his lost boys. There was a little detail about this that really struck me. Over the weekend, Democratic members of the House and Senate tried to enter the USAID building where Musk and his boys were doing their dirty work. But these members of the House and Senate were denied entry. What? I don't know what that means. By whom? Who denied their entry? The reason this struck me, it's way beyond words. It's way beyond bluster. It's even beyond meddling inside computer systems. We now have physical guards denying entry of United States representatives and senators into a building where Musk and his lost boys are doing God knows what. That just really struck me as, man, how does that escalate? Physical guards? So, yeah, these members of Congress just turned and left. Okay. At some point, what, they have to go get their army? This is pretty frightening. So the word of the day is state capture. A guy by the name of Tyler McBrien at the New York Times wrote an article everybody's talking about. Political economists have a name for what's going on right now. They call it state capture. It occurs when wealthy private interests influence a government to such a degree that they can freely direct policy decisions and public funds for their own benefit or for the benefit of their buddies. Buddies is my word. 3 elements to this. The first is shaping law and policy. That certainly has been happening. Then capture the budget, which includes appointments, government contracts, regulatory decisions, so forth. And then disabling the checks on power, which, of course, we've seen with the firing of several inspectors general. The tamping down, or I should say the crushing of any dissent from cabinet members. He's chosen all lackeys and sycophants. The entire Republican Party has been put to heel. So yeah, no accountability. And as far as checks and balances go, that includes the media. And we certainly have seen how that has gone. Here's a small example, but it's one of many, many, and it will only grow, as to the idea that Musk and his interests will prevail. The National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, over the weekend said it will stop emailing news organizations and reporters with updates about the 2 plane crashes that occurred earlier last week. Moving forward, the federal agency tasked with investigating transportation-related accidents and disasters said news organizations and reporters will have to follow the agency's official account on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, where all NTSB updates about news conferences or other investigative information will be posted moving forward. So no more press releases. You have to go to Elon Musk's site. And this is only the first of many such orders. You can be certain. As of this recording, Musk and his lost boys have already infiltrated USAID and virtually destroyed it. The Department of the Treasury, they've got their hands on the payment system and all of our information and Social Security numbers, our addresses, our employers' addresses. They've conquered the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, The GSA, General Services Administration, they're the ones who lease property, federally owned buildings, land. Yeah, that's no small outfit. The Justice Department and the FBI. Yeah, Musk and his boys have infiltrated the very systems and from within are virtually controlling these organizations at this point. This is state capture. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. The Department of Education, which, again, unlawfully, will be just virtually destroyed from within and through executive order if it hasn't happened already. Again, bad cop working together. Destroying, just dismantling the Department of Education, a department of the U.S. government established by Congress. Only Congress can dissolve it, but he doesn't care. Nobody cares. The Department of Labor, the Small Business Administration, the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, the human resources of the entire federal government, and just today, the CIA. You can add other so-called independent agencies, the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunities Commission. That's where you go if you're being discriminated against in your workplace. The NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, supposed to be advocating for labor, workers, just virtually killed. For all intents and purposes, they no longer exist. Their staff has been told not to come into work. Their website is dark. Try going on the website of any of these agencies. Oops, sorry, can't be reached. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Those are the people who enforce things like the abuse of consumers by credit card companies, outrageous interest rates, fees, bank fees, airlines gouging you at every turn for extra baggage fees or undercutting you on compensation when you're bumped. All these little consumer protections, hundreds, thousands of consumers done great service through this bureau. Millions, billions of dollars saved. It's gone with just a click of the delete key. By the time you hear this, I don't know how many more you can add to the list. Doctors, as we speak, are rushing to access CDC archives, Centers for Disease Control, because the website has been purged. All the information these doctors need, all the studies, all the data. And these are just a few examples. I'm sure there's a lot more at this point. This is what I've got just from the news. They're just examples of a complete government-wide takeover. State capture. And then, of course, there's the media that's supposed to tell you about all this. We learned last week that the New York Times, NBC News, and NPR and Politico have all been booted from the Pentagon, no longer able to use resources at the Pentagon to do their job. They can still report, but no, you can't use a telephone in the building here. You can't have a desk or a chair. You can't use an outlet. Now, those are reserved now for, and this is not a joke, Breitbart News, BuzzFeed, and One America News. Yeah. And as regards the media, it's been long promoted by MAGA that they want to reform libel laws, making any news media, even individual podcasters like yours truly, more easily susceptible to censorship, using the power of the state to shut people up. What they don't destroy, they'll take over. And what they can't take over, they'll destroy. So it's right now, today, we have to get out and fight this. It's not tomorrow. It should have been really a couple weeks ago when this started. But hey, Democrats, yes, you have limited power, but what power you have to use to block and delay the gears of state however you can. Remember Tommy Tuberville, the nutcase Republican senator who put a hold on military promotions for like a year and a half? How did he do that? Because single senators have power. I don't know how it all works. You guys are supposed to know how it works. Make it work. Use your legislative power to stop this. Use your bully pulpit. Use your social media. Do something. Organizations and unions, keep it up. I've had lots of praise for the lawsuits, etc. You're suing. Members of the FBI who've been fired are suing. Labor unions are suing. Good, good. Keep it up. Hit it harder. And hit the streets. Come on, organizations. That's what you do. You organize. Organize people to hit the streets. We had it was reported about 1,000 people yesterday in D.C., and elected Democrats got up and made some not very inspiring speeches. From the reporting I read, the people in the crowd were a lot more radical than the people making the speeches, but at least we got out there. God. So it was 1,000 people yesterday. It was another several hundred people today at the White House. Good. Keep it up. We need 10 times that, 1,000 times that. How many people tomorrow? Hit the streets. Here's something you can do. Follow Elon Musk around. Where is he today? Is he in the Treasury building? Is he in his White House office? Is he in his palatial digs in the Eisenhower building? Is he at the Office of Personnel Management today? Where are he and his little boys today? Go there. Go there in the thousands. Make sure they can hear you. What is going on, America? Why aren't you in the streets? Don't you know what's going on? Each of us individuals, several phone calls per day to your legislators. Support with your money, legal resources like ACLU and others. And hit the streets today, not tomorrow, today. Yeah, I like the follow Musk idea. Go to where he is. Go to the White House. Go to Congress. Go to the Treasury building. Wherever he and his bad cop buddy are, go there. Join a street protest in your own town or start one. Because, and I'll leave you with this, they are beatable. We absolutely can win, but we have to move fast while we still have power. That's the whole point. They're taking away our power. And they will succeed if we don't fight back. The very power they're trying to take away. Use it or lose it. And for those of you who feel overwhelmed, that's going to be the word of the year, probably overwhelmed. I'll leave you with this quote from Dan Savage, which I just love. And I'll leave you with a little inspiration. Anyone who tells you that making time for joy, however you experience or define it, is a distraction or a betrayal has no idea what they're talking about. During the darkest days of the AIDS crisis, we buried our friends in the morning, we protested in the afternoon, and we danced all fucking night. The dance kept us in the fight because it was the dance we were fighting for. I think that's beautiful. I think it's inspirational. However you experience your joy, make time for it. It will feed your mission, your duty to fight. And we have to do that. We have to do it. We have to do it. All right. I love you. That's the show for today. It can be heard on all podcast platforms or go to the website, charlesburcell.com. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio, riverwestradio.com. Follow on Facebook. Contact me, charlesburcell@gmail.com. And thanks to Peter Donalds, who wrote and performed the theme song. All right. Love you. See ya.